All right, so here we are today to break down the most decisive moment of the 2025 Otter gravel race, and that is the start, the first climb, and the first descent. I do have a full-length POV race video linked here and in the description below, as well as my sponsor discount codes and my website link there as well. As we can see here, I am starting nowhere close to the front, and this is mostly because I showed up late to the race and chose to get a little bit of a warm-up in instead of lining up and maybe starting 1 or 2 rows ahead of where I did end up starting, because this race starts on about a minute and a half, minute 45 long climb before it leads into the first real descent of the race. This climb averages 5 to 6%, but obviously we are spread across the road and there is a lot of traffic to work through. Ended up having actually a pretty good physical performance on this climb. Total duration of the climb ended up being about 1:40. I think average power was around 560 for this first section of the race, but this only got me about halfway up the field before we rolled into the first decisive descent of the race. I say this is the most decisive point because this descent is super fast, and while it's not super narrow, we're going at speeds where there's really only one good line. So if you get caught behind traffic, caught behind a crash, fall off the road, or are behind someone that ends up falling off the road, gaps can form instantly and essentially cause separation that is not going to be possible to close in such a high level event. As we can see, getting closer to the top of this climb, getting passed by a few folks, but I'm still maintaining my effort just because I know that going around this onto the top of the descent, we're going to need to be on the gas as hard as possible. And I am able to make a little bit of position leading into these 2 back-to-back hairpins before we actually start going downhill. Bottlenecks here pretty significantly, and we all slow down just because we're so far back at this point in the race. And here we see Braden Lane passing me way on the outside, and I definitely should have followed him because that move right there ended up getting him into a position where he could take the descent a little bit faster than I could, and obviously he ended up getting to the front of the race and I did not. Here we are. We're essentially, this is like a little false flat downhill before the descent actually starts, and you can see all these riders just lined out in front of me, double file, each on one side of the road or the other. Everyone's trying to take whatever line they could. See, already people crashing, already people having mechanicals, and just causing gaps to open up where there's just no room to pass at the speeds we're going. So here we are a little bit further down the descent, and this is where issues start happening for me, just getting caught behind slower riders and me playing it safe and not wanting to risk it and take a sketchier line to get past folks, just because we're already going so fast. Obviously, best case scenario would have been for me to get around these guys as fast as possible so that I could take the descent as fast as I could. I definitely felt like I was not pushing on this descent at really any point, just because there were people that I was trying to either stay behind or not take a sketchy line to get around. We can also see as soon as we get onto the loose main part of the descent, the dust is kicking up pretty significantly, so you really can't see more than a couple wheels ahead of you, and it actually gets a little bit worse the further down this descent we go. This descent is super fast. We're going well over 30 miles an hour, over 40 miles an hour for a good chunk of this, and because it's so loose, that adds to the technicality of it. There's a couple hairpins and a couple turns a little bit further down this that if you cannot hit at full speed. You do have to use your brakes even if you are on big tires. Having the mountain bike tires is a distinct advantage on this part of the course, just because you're able to get a little more traction, even though it is loose rock on top of hard pack, so there's really no way to get any traction on that sort of stuff. Doesn't matter what size tire you have. But having the Race Kings on, having a 2.2, 100% the move, and I'm really happy that the state all-road has clearance for these with room to spare. See, so you can see here, everyone is already in their biggest gear, or almost in their biggest gear, but there's just no room to get around these people. Like these little gaps that open up are just super sketchy, just because you need to be on the right line to get around these turns that come just around the bend here, as you can kind of see off in the distance. See, so here we start getting into the technical part of the descent, technical in quotation marks. If you're riding this on your own, it's really not that bad, but when you're in a field of 150 and everyone's trying to take whatever line is available, there isn't any room for error. And you can start seeing here, people are taking it safer ahead of me, taking sketchier lines, pulling their feet out. And this is where I was really hesitant to try and like take a less than ideal line to get ahead of these riders, just because I did not want to risk crashing in the first 10 minutes of the race. You can also see with all this dust kicking up, you can see it on camera, but in the race, I could see these two riders ahead of me, but nothing further, and really just going on memory on where the decisive turns and where the sketchy turns were that you needed to slow down for. You can see here, roll up on this power rider and he's slip sliding around. And honestly, if I should have taken a line around this guy a little bit sooner, just because this gap is already opening up ahead of me, and you can see this little group that is just ahead of this power rider and I already has a gap to the group ahead of them. So on this descent, there's also a lot of braking bumps. So if you're on a narrower tire, you're just going to be getting bounced around, and they're at pretty key moments when you need to either be on the brakes or be on the exact right line, which having a bigger tire helps with a lot, because a lot of that vibration is dampened with the larger volume tire. And you also have that added traction of having a bigger contact patch on the ground. But it's still, at the speed you're going down this, at over 40 miles an hour on this loose, fast descent, it gets sketchy if you're around folks the entire way down, which we were, since this was the very start of the race, and obviously everyone's still super fresh. So here we are, we're almost at the bottom of the descent here, and this is where I'm like, okay, panic mode. We gotta start moving up as quickly as possible, because these gaps are only gonna get bigger as people are able to actually get on the pedals. So Ted King right in front of me, foot out, and it's about, I think it's just around this next turn here where we start going up a slight rise, and this is where I'm like, okay, I've got the gas, and I need to start using it so that I can save something out of this race. So past Ted here, we get a little bit of momentum to use, and we're trying to catch on to this next little chase group that is trying to catch on to the next group ahead of it. And this is kind of where I mess up. We're gonna pass John Borselman here in just a second. And you can see a lot of these guys just are not taking these lines as fast as you could, just either from hesitation, a little bit of sketchiness, a little bit of scaredness, but also maybe not having the right tire choice for this course. So at this point, I have my head down with the idea of trying to save whatever I can to make it up into this next chase group. So this group that's just ahead of me would end up making contact with what would be the main group of the day behind the lead group. And I think they ended up racing for about a top 20 or so from the riders in this group. So you can see here, I am trying to smash as hard as I can. And you can see already on the other side of the road where these groups have been spread out significantly from less than 10 minutes of racing already, primarily coming from the descent. All right, so this power rider passes me here, still kind of slipping around on some of these loose corners, even on the flat, just because we're going pretty quick through them. And he ends up riding really, really well, straight through a pothole right there. So I end up sitting on this power rider here for just a little bit as we enter the next climb of the course, which was where I thought most of the race would regroup. So sitting on this power rider here, we are chasing onto the next chase group on the road, which you can see just up ahead of us there. We pass and catch Adam Roberge, but the road is going up here, and I'm already feeling it just from being on the chase since basically the start of that descent. I do end up getting dropped here in just a little bit, like closer to the top of the climb, and am unable to make contact with this chase group that's ahead of us, which would end up catching on to the main group of the day, the main bunch of the day that would end up racing for top 20, top 30 position or so. And Roberge swings us through, and I have nothing. I'm just trying to save everything I have to try and hold on to these guys to make contact with the chase group over the top, but they do end up dropping me here in just a little bit. All right, so here you can see we're on the road part of this first real climb on the course, and you can see the chase group just ahead of us here. I'm trying to hold on to Roberge as best I can. This power rider has ridden away from both of us at this point, and Adam's about to ride away from me here as we turn the corner and the road gets a little bit steeper. Obviously, being on the chase essentially this entire descent and onto this climb, I did not have the gas to make it into this next group on the road, and would end up falling back into the chase group that is just behind us, that had Lachlan Morton, Ted King, Stefano Barberi, and a few others. That's it. That's the most decisive moment of the 2025 Lifetime Gravel Race in my eyes. Essentially, that first climb and first descent dictated where the groups were on the road for essentially the remainder of the race. Obviously, there are other key sections on the course, including the single track section and the climb up to Lookout Ridge that comes at the end of the course. But this first climb and first descent really dictated where the race was happening, and this all happened in the first 10-15 minutes of the race. Race recap coming soon. See ya.